All right, great. Hi, everybody. My name is John Kilkenny. I am the director of the Sewanee Summer Music Festival. And even though we are here in Sewanee in person, I'm actually in a Sewanee office right now. I'm not in my condo back in DC. We're on a Zoom with a whole bunch of folks to talk about the wonderful percussion concerto renewal that we're going to be performing this weekend. We have soloist and composer and conductor, and so I'm just going to ask everyone to kind of go around. I'll start with you, Phil, since you're first on my screen here. Just introduce yourself and where are you from, and we'll get into talking about the piece a little bit.
Sure, thanks, John. Good afternoon. I'm Phil O'Banion, and I am the Director of Percussion Studies at Temple University in Philadelphia, and then, of course, also here at the Sewanee Summer Music Festival.
My name is Gene Moon. I am the conductor here of the Cumberland Orchestra. I am the director of orchestras at California Baptist University in Southern California.
Awesome. How about our duo here working on the same screen?
Hello, my name is Alvin Macasero. I completed my undergrad at George Mason University, and this fall I'll be heading to Temple University.
And I'm Lucas Vogelman. I'm going to be a junior at Rice University studying with Matt Strauss. Yeah, I'm still there.
And any background music we hear, it's because we're actually at a music festival in person where in-person music is being played. And so there's occasional ambient noise. And our composer, Viet, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Viet Cuong, and I'm the composer of Renewal, and I'm really excited that this piece is being played in person. It's really amazing. Thank you.
So I think we just wanted to give folks, some of our students that are watching and others that will check in on this, just kind of a little bit about, Viet, a little bit about the piece and the inspiration and your collaboration with Sandbox and kind of how you crafted the parts. So if you want to just kind of jump in and tell us about this and talk about any of your other music that you might be, I know you're doing a lot of writing at the moment and a number of commissions and performances all over the world. So let's start with Renewal and then take it where you want to from there.
Yeah, sure. So excuse me if my voice is a little weird. I'm a little bit sick right now. So it's good we're doing this virtual. But yeah, so Renewal, originally it was a piece for percussion quartet and chamber orchestra that was commissioned by the Sewanee Symphony. And the Sewanee Symphony is based in obviously Albany, New York, upstate New York, near the Hudson, and not too far away Schenectady, where the GE headquarters at the time was like, it had a really big sort of facility there. And so GE was kind of a big sponsor of the symphony. And they had wanted, they kind of requested that maybe a composer could write a piece inspired by renewable energy. And so that kind of became the genesis of this piece. And I remember talking to the conductor, David Allen Miller, and he was like, okay, well, could we do like a movement about water, wind, and solar power? I was like, sure, why not? So, because renewable energy is something I believe in. So I was like, well, let's do it. And then so I asked if it could be a concerto for percussion quartet, because I also wanted it to be some sort of collaborative piece. So I had known Sandbox for a long time because I went to school with them, and we're the same age, and just felt like kind of the right time to do a big piece together, because we had talked about like working on a piece together for years at that point. I remember when they first got their studio in Brooklyn, like I came over and we like talked about stuff, and I remember them playing for me. And remember, the one thing I remember the most is like, I remember like Victor and Johnny like playing hockets back and forth, like just a single stroke roll hocket and getting like to an insane speed. So I was like, well, if I ever write for them, hockets will be a big part of it. So then fast forward a couple of years, and then this kind of opportunity came up, and then I remember talking to them, and I was like, okay, so I went to their studio and we worked on kind of finding the right instruments and sounds for each of the movements. The water percussion stuff was something that I'd done with the crystal glasses in a piece called Water, Wine, Brandy, Brine that I wrote for So Percussion a couple of years before that. And I always joke that that's probably one of the best ideas I'll ever have. So I was like, I can't let that go to waste. So I had to use it again. And I think just also what the crystal glasses symbolize, in addition to them they obviously have water in them, so it's like water, right? But we toast glasses when we're celebrating something and when we are in the presence of others usually. And if we only have 2 glasses, we just have our own dyad. But if we have someone else, we can actually like make something that sounds more like music. So it's kind of the theme of the piece is like cooperation and synergy. And so therefore, like all of the solo parts are kind of written as if the quartet is one soloist. You've probably noticed now that there isn't any moment where like percussion 1 like busts out with like a 20 measure solo or something. It's always like everyone is kind of as if they're one soloist and they move to different stations together. And it's kind of written with all of that in mind.
I think the Hocket comment, a few of us were smiling when you mentioned that, because of all of the parts of the piece that we've worked on, I think that has been the most, I say this with fondness for the piece, but anxiety inducing for a group that doesn't play together all the time, right? I mean, we are not, as Sandbox is, a regularly engaged group. So I think that's been a really interesting and kind of fun part of the whole process is working on those Hocket moments, especially at the end of the. Thank you for putting one at the very end of the piece too. That really, that really is fun.
Yeah, and so every time I've like been at a performance of Sandbox or like performing it in the like rehearsal right before the performance, they always practice that. They like always go to that at the very end before the show. So but yeah, it's thank you for putting in the work to do all these Hockets, because I know like even for Sandbox, the second movement, especially when I first sent the music to them, they were like concerned. And then it was fine. I remember like a couple weeks before the premiere, I went to Brooklyn and they played it for me, and I was like, well, that's great. But like I know it wasn't easy, even though like the second movement, it like kind of grooves and it just goes along and it can sound effortless, but it's not. So I appreciate all the work they put into it. And it's also a piece, like, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's like hard to practice by yourself, right? Like all the solo parts, like it doesn't make any sense when you practice it by yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to be the only percussionist here talking, but Phil or Alvin or Lucas, I mean, what did you guys find with the working on the part before we got here together? Was that kind of along the lines there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the kind of thing where you can study and you can work, but you sort of know you're missing 75% of what you really need to work on it. So it wasn't until we got together in the last couple weeks that I think it really started to take shape.
Yeah,
So I know.
sorry. Each movement is kind of challenging in its own way, and like kind of touches on every kind of challenge that we have to be able to deal with. Like the first movement is extremely exposed, and like there's no hiding behind, you know, a flam, like a wrong click or anything. And then the second movement, it's like the time has to just be completely rock solid. And yeah, like you said, you can practice it alone with a metronome as much as you want, or even, you know, the 4 soloists as much as you want. But as we've been discovering, getting it with the orchestra is definitely the hardest part. And then the third movement is just all interlocked and, you know, blending and making sure that it's super together. So yeah, they're all very difficult in their own way, and practicing your own part is probably, yeah, I would even say like 15% of it, Phil.
Well, and for me, like I've not played a lot of wine glasses before, so like the anxiety that I have about like shattering the wine. I shouldn't say that until after the concert, because now I've jinxed it. But you know, that sense of there's the To the Earth, the flower pot piece that Steve Schick and many others play, and he tells a story about one of the thousands of times he played it where he broke the flower pot, and just like how that changed the whole dynamic of the piece. And I certainly don't want to do that in your piece, because that would kind of render the whole thing moot. But that was for me probably the most time spent alone, was really working on that, you know, making sure I didn't like, you know, smack into it, and you know we're doing all right with that. So Gina, I wanted you and Viet to talk a little bit about, or to just kind of jump in about the work with the orchestra and how you've dealt with kind of teaching the piece to a group of younger students. I mean, we certainly have mixed ages in Cumberland, but new music for a younger group of group of players have its own challenges. So I'd love for the two of you to chat about that a little bit.
It's been great. You have a wide variety of extended techniques in there, Viet, and all the players they looked at music they looked at in the beginning and thought, this makes no sense. But then once you teach it and put it together, the most proverbial aha moment must have been the seagulls moment. When I told them about how to do the false harmonics, and like you said, we talked about it last week, you keep the interval and you continue down. They thought, how's that going to be seagulls? And then once we started it, along with the little trill twerps, it was great. It just, the effect that you get exactly from how you wrote it. And especially all the bending glissandi when we change chords is really fantastic. And we've had a great time putting it together. I got to be honest, we ran through it with just the orchestra, and we read through it fairly well. But then when the percussion quartet comes in, there's just another added level of lock and load that needs to happen. And as the quartet has alluded to, it's like only practicing a quarter of it at a time when you don't have the entire quartet together. So your concerto is definitely one where it's all or nothing. You can't have little bits and pieces missing. It's so collaborative in that nature. And I think that's what I've appreciated, and the orchestra, from preparing it because of that collaborative nature together.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, it's like kind of this thing where like the whole piece is based on cooperation and synergy, and like the idea of like, there's water, wind, and solar power, but then on a deeper level, it's to make renewable energy a reality, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of people working together. And so when the theme of the piece is that, it's like really, like you say, it's like all or nothing. Like everyone has to be 100% there. And not just the soloist, but the orchestra as well.
Yeah, no one can phone it in. No one has a part that they can just phone in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's great to hear that that you had that aha moment with the bird stuff. And that's one of my favorite parts of the piece, actually, even though it's pretty simple. And then like the air sounds and the winds, it's like both sound kind of like gusts of wind, obviously, but also like ocean waves, like kind of waves in the distance. And then with the seagulls and the birds, it's kind of like the slow morphing of water to wind.
Yeah.
So having younger, Viet, you've written music for a whole range of groups. And I know for vocalists and for instrumentalists and for wind band and for younger students and for professional groups. Like, how much did you factor? Because this work was written for professional orchestra, and you've set it also for chamber winds and to be played in a different settings. Like, how much do you factor in some of these effects and some of these other things when you're writing for professional ensembles versus student groups? And just talk for a little bit about that. I don't want to take advantage of our time together. I know you're under the weather, but I'd just love to hear about your writing approach with different kinds of musicians.
Yeah, I've written, like you said, like pieces ranging from like 7th grade band to professional, and it's always like there's always like interesting challenges with doing any sort of piece. And no matter what piece you write, even if it's for like the greatest professional ensemble in the world, there's gonna be some sort of limitations, even down to like how long the piece can be. And I would never write a piece where I asked for like 30 set of timpani, like there are always limitations. And so I wrote this one, there wasn't really, I didn't feel like, restrictions on maybe reasonable ranges of instruments or rhythms. But one thing I always keep in mind when I'm writing for an orchestra, even if it's a professional orchestra, is that orchestras oftentimes don't have as many rehearsals as like a band does. Think of how many rehearsals a middle school band has. It's like 5 days a month.
You do have unlimited time with middle school, with younger groups, right?
Yeah, or even university bands, you have you know, you could have a month of rehearsals a couple times a week until the performance. But then with a professional orchestra, it's like usually 3 rehearsals over like 3 or 4 days, and then you have dress rehearsal and performance. And so I always keep that in mind. And so there are certain things in this piece where like the first movement has a lot of meter changes, and I knew that like that was going to take some time, so I didn't want to make like every movement have meter changes. If you notice, like the last movement is completely 4/4. So to like have a balance of things. And I think that also can kind of create a balanced piece as well, where the vibe of each movement is quite different based on, you know, other things that I was balancing just for purely practical reasons.
Yeah, that's great, and thank you for that. And I want to get Phil in here before I do. Just to quickly say that, well, actually, it's enough about me. Phil, jump in. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Viet, thanks for the piece, and we're grateful to you and Sandbox for bringing it to life. And it's been fun to put together. I'll have to say, it's probably not, for those coming to the concert tomorrow, it's probably not what one would expect from a percussion concerto necessarily, right? In that there's a certain virtuosity required with a lot of percussion concerti that, you know, it's very notey and it's very athletic, and there's a little bit of that in the second movement, but it's shared again among the 4 soloists and the way we interact. But what I really appreciate is that there's an intimacy and a sensitivity required of the soloists and of the orchestra. You know, you've got things, you know, just you know, the sound of glass, you know, touching another glass, and the intonation required there, even with the glasses. And I think my favorite part personally is some of the colors and the textures in the third movement, which, you know, it would definitely not be possible if this were a concerto for one soloist, right? But with all 4 players working together, and you've got bowed sounds and crotales and cymbals and vibes and Glock, I just think it's a little bit surreal at moments, just the colors coming out of the percussion parts, and then when combined with the orchestra, I think it's really beautiful. So bravo, and you know, we're enjoying it and look forward to the performance tomorrow night.
Well, thanks so much. That means a lot. Just like, because those are things I was obviously thinking of, and when I was writing it, and to know that that's like coming across is always really great. And so really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll say, like, when I was writing this too, thinking about like what an expectation is for a percussion concerto, I think a lot of people come in like thinking that the last note's going to be like a huge like drum, like a bang, and things like that. And I was a percussionist growing up, actually, and like, so I'm kind of maybe more like attuned to certain like percussion expectations than a typical composer who didn't play percussion. And so I kind of wanted to defy that, like to have a percussion concerto end with like a slow, poignant movement, and to have the last like measures be like quiet. And to still write it in a way where it feels like virtuosic in a different way, or to where people will still feel like they want to, you know, stand up at the end and clap. It was kind of a fun challenge to do it, and I'm glad I did that instead of just ending it with like something like the second movement.
Well, I think as a piece of music, I think as a work for us in percussion, but even more broadly, it fills I don't want to say a gap, but it fills a space. And as Phil was saying, with so many percussion concertos, there's either, you know, 1,000 instruments on stage, and so there's that visual impact and that sort of, you know, oh my gosh, how is that one person or, you know, 2 people going to play this piece, you know, or it's a million notes, or it's you know, somebody blasting away on a marimba. And this is a different piece. It's artistically very challenging. There are technically challenging moments as well, but it really forces the players and the orchestra and the conductor, forces probably isn't the right word, it really allows everybody to think about percussion in a much different way than what maybe they're accustomed to, particularly audiences. You know, here in Sewanee, we have a sophisticated audience. They've had a director who's been a percussionist now for 4 years, and so they've been getting a lot more percussion than maybe they are used to, but still, you know, they're used to, it's not regular still to have a percussion concerto. And so this piece, I think, will open them up to a whole other perspective of what it means to, feature our instrument in a really high level artistic way. At least I hope we do it. If we do it right, that's what will happen. So anyway, we could chat about this a lot. And I'm sorry if I've left anybody out. If anyone wants to chime in with last comments or anything like that, please do. But Viet, I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us today and to meet with Gene earlier, and really to be engaged as a composer with us in our program. And I know our students are excited to play your music. I hope some of them will find you on social media and other places and connect with what you're doing, because you have a whole catalog of really fascinating and interesting music for a whole range of genres. So we're grateful that you're a part of our season this year, and it won't be the last time we have the opportunity to play your music. So thank you so much.
Just thank you. It's after this year, it's just surreal to know that a piece that's this big and requires so many people and requires some people to work together so well, like that it's happening. It's just amazing. And just want to say thank you to all of you for making it happen. And I wish I could hear it, be there to hear it, but good luck with everything. And say thanks to all the members of the orchestra for me as well. Their music isn't easy either.
We absolutely will. And for those watching, the concert's Friday night in Sewanee, and if you happen to be in the area, please check it out. And there'll be some excerpts posted later on, or maybe the whole thing. We'll see what we post later on after the performance. But really, really enjoyed the chance to work on the piece, and hope I know it won't be the last time we play it. So yeah, thank you so much. And Phil and everybody, Lucas, Gene, Alvin, thank you all. And yeah, we'll see you Friday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.